Some of the coping strategies I use include planning well in advance what I need to do and then what alternatives or what could go wrong and how to plan for those. You can't have a plan for everything, but if you feel like you have a plan A, B, and C, then you can feel more confident that you can deal with the situation. Um, I try, if I'm going to a store, try to find times where they're less crowded, early mornings or evenings. Um, Dinner time sometimes can be a little less busy. So I try and find those times to go out into crowds. Um, if I want to take my kids out, I may avoid festivals events, but we can go to, say, the animal park or the museum, and we can still see things out in the world or more about the world without necessarily being involved in large events. And nowadays, there's a lot of stuff you can do virtually. You can take virtual tours of museums across the world um, and get to experience some of that stuff. Um, and I try and teach my daughter, I try and set an example for my daughter on realizing that anxiety is okay. It's how we react to those situations, and we do our best not to let it hold us back from doing what we want to do.
Okay, so this is probably one of the most important. This is, if you've watched any of my YouTube videos, one of the things that I have been talking about the most, and that's your coping strategies. So this obviously can be used by people who do not deal with anxiety as well. We all have daily life stressors, and in fact, it's daily life stressors that typically are what get people into anxiety and depressive states. So we all have those. We all have to practice self-care, whether you're mentally healthy or not. So coping strategies are incredibly important for anybody's lifestyle, but significantly for those with mental health disorders, because it is literally the only way for us to get through without literally ending up potentially in the mental ward. So,
and also for me and others, it's to acknowledge that you have to do that and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I find it extremely hard to buy something for myself.
Yeah.
To just do something for me because I always want to do something for other people. But having learned this last couple of years, like I said before, I breathe. I'm a crier, so if I'm mad, glad, sad, happy, I'm crying, and that helps. That's a release.
Yeah.
The crystals, the reflexology, meditation. I've also learned for me to extricate myself from negative energies, negative people.
Yeah.
Because smile and put up. No, I'm too old and too bitter now. I'm not putting up that crap. So I've made I've made a decision to step back from those people or those things that are like just suck the life right out of me. That has helped tremendously. And it's made a world of difference because you can do all these other coping strategies if you've got not being, your whole world is just being pulled apart by this total negative energy. So I find all of that very, very helpful.
Absolutely.
And writing, I'm a big proponent of writing, and I mean journaling is great. I suck at it, but I've probably got 4 journals started in various years. But for me, writing, and I just write my thoughts out or type them out, and that is what is helping me.
Yeah, so by writing, you're bringing recognition to your thoughts. In anxiety and depression, and other mental health disorders as well, it's very positive to recognize your thoughts, because that's how you're going to recognize your triggers, and that's how you're going to avoid them or learn to cope with them. So Claire, I really love that you talked about the negative energies, because that is a really big thing. You can't avoid negative energy in your life entirely, but the things that are optional, so the things like friends who are not supportive of your mental health, I was talking to a lady that I met through a support group, and she said that her siblings are not supportive of her mental health. They tell her all the time that it's all in her head. And I mean, it is, but not in the way that they think it is. And they don't realize that it's actually a chemical and processes imbalance, right? And so they're just telling her, you just need to move on. And you're just being stupid, like, get over it, right? And that is not helpful. That is very negative. And this lady, she loves her sister very much, but she said she had to step away from interacting with her sister because it just causes her too much stress. And you cannot get healthy if you continue to expose yourself to all these unnecessary stressors.
Exactly.
So it is very important to control your environment and control your surroundings. For myself, I was very fortunate to not have too many negative people in my life. I think partially because I've already kind of weeded those people out over my lifetime, but also because a lot of people know how passionate I am about mental health. So if you can't talk to me about mental health, and you can't handle it, then you're not meant to be my friend.
And I have also, because I was always the quiet one. Yeah, she says. But exactly. But I mean, I was little. I didn't talk. I was too shy. I was too scared. I was too anxious.
For a long
like,
time.
Didn't say a word. We're clearly over that now. But it's, you had to like slowly I had to draw a line in the sand and say no. And that's okay to say no. And it's okay if people don't understand it. And really, if they don't like it, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
But to get to that stage has been a long time coming. And I just say I'm old and bitter and I don't care anymore. Which I do care, but I'm more concerned about how it's going to affect me and to be selfish. And being selfish for someone who has anxiety is the hardest thing you were ever going to do.
Taking care of you
good Lord.
is not selfish. Because if
in your brain you think it is.
It is, and I agree, because I think that all the time. One of my biggest things with anxiety is I think to myself that I'm being selfish, taking time away for myself when I should be helping my youth and my client and my coworkers. And that is something that I'm really struggling with, and I know that that's silly. And it's
exhausting. But
it's just there. I have that little bit of tightness right now thinking about it. It's still something that causes anxiety for me. There's a sense of guilt that comes with how your anxiety impacts other people. But like Claire was saying, like she's saying that I'm just old and bitter, but it's not that. And even my counselor has said this, like, you're very fortunate to have come to the conclusion of how important you are. Yeah. Because if I am an empty vessel, I cannot put my best foot forward to help other people because I don't have anything to give. And that is literally what happened. I exhausted myself and I emptied my cup, and I could not pour any more out of my cup for other people because I didn't have any more in me.
And for you to do that at your age, and that's why I say I'm old and bitter, because I could be her mother, but because we grew up in different times, different experiences, but my generation, things like that weren't talked about. You were just, too excitable, too anxious, too weepy, too quiet, just get over it. You know, like, just, there's nothing wrong, just get on with it.
Yeah, right? Mental health, so, there was no education.
None, right? So for me to come to this conclusion, like I said, old and bitter, it's because I'm that much older than her. And the fact that you recognize it now that's awesome. Yeah. Right? I mean, you saw me when my cup was empty.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And other people recognized, and I did to some degree, that my cup was empty, but I didn't know how to make it full again. And then the cup was spilled and I had to go anyway. But that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me.
I agree. Yeah.
Right? And when that happens, I mean, my sister was like, whatever, a little bit after, my sister's like, you look amazing, you're glowing. I'm like, well, I'm not pregnant, but okay, thank you. Because I didn't recognize how much the external stressors were creating this person that I didn't like. Yeah. Right? I mean, when I yelled at somebody at the dollar store, I'm like, oh, this is wrong. Yeah. And I recognized that, and it wasn't long after that things changed, right? Yeah. For the better. But I mean, it still doesn't mean I liked the change, but to recognize it now, it worked out well in the end. But to acknowledge that that's what it was, and it continues to be.
That change is not always bad. It's a really good thing to remind ourselves of.
But you're right, you can't give if you're empty.
Yeah. So, coping strategies are just so good because it helps you to realign yourself. So, like I said, in my videos that I've been doing, I've been preaching some coping strategies. Art therapy is one that I've just recently started. My counselor was like, let's just try something different, because she said, because of your background in mental health, you already are equipped with a lot of tools, but she's like, let me try to help you with some other tools that you may not have thought of, which is why I'm seeing a counselor. Yes, I'm trained in mental health, but having that outside perspective
is so much better.
Exactly.
Because you and I can talk about this, and you and I understand what we're going through, but other people, you need someone that doesn't know you, that can understand what you're telling them, the symptoms, the this, the that. There's no judgment.
Yeah.
There's no negativity.
There's no bias.
No, constructive. Okay, well, yes. And in some cases, well, maybe think about that. That's not reality. But that has probably been the best thing for me, is to talk. Because you can go and go, bleh.
Yeah.
And it's okay. They're not going to judge you. There's no bias. And you feel the weight lifting.
Yeah. And
right?
the one thing I love is that she has actually, like, even though we've gone through, like, talking about, like, the window of tolerance and stuff like that, this counselor, she's so wonderful. She actually uses 2 sessions to teach you about your mental health and how your brain works.
That's
and
cool.
How your anxiety fluctuates and stuff like that. Because obviously I've already educated in it, we kind of flew through it a little bit, but at the same time, the way, like, that, even though I understood these concepts already, it was the way that she described them. Something just clicked when she described them the way that she did, because it was a way that I never looked at them before or never learned to understand them. And so even though that was already something that I kind of knew, I now look at it almost in a little bit of a different way, and I can articulate that better. I can't articulate. I can articulate that better.
That's funny.
Now, because she has taught me that, and so even for an educated person or somebody who has been through it and seen multiple counselors, it never hurts to talk to somebody different.
Exactly. And also talking to somebody different and thinking outside of the box of what you've been taught and how you were raised. It's okay to go, you know what, maybe, and that's what drew me to crystals, to meditation, to Reiki. That is just energy. And you can, and I'm like, okay, sure. Holy, it makes a huge difference, the energy shift that can happen in your body and how it affects, energy affects you and affects your anxiety. And if it's shifted, the weight does come off.
Yeah.
And so I recommend that. I love it. It's, I found some really awesome practitioners in town here, and they pull from everything, and that's what I've discovered that works for me. It's not one thing, it's this, it's that,
a little bit of this,
a little bit of that, and that has made, I would say, a huge difference with this last bout of what's going on.
Yeah.
So
obviously, like I said, talking to people, for myself, meditation is huge. I prefer guided meditations.
Yes.
I don't sleep well, so I also listen to, it's called Snoozecast Sleep Stories. So basically, it's like a bedtime story.
Yeah.
But the way that they read you this story or tell you this story, it's in a very relaxed tone. They remind you first to bring recognition to your breathing and to get in a relaxed position.
don't drive.
Yeah,
Use
don't
machinery.
Yeah, they literally say, do not listen to these while driving.
Exactly.
But because of the way that they do their voices and they gradually
so
lower
calming.
their voice, realistically, it's like a mother reading their kid a book to go to sleep. It's a very comforting thing. And those helped me quite a bit. I wish they helped a little bit better, but my brain does not stop, so we're working on that.
And having said that too, mix that up a little bit too,
Yeah.
because I didn't realize there were so many things. YouTube is my friend.
Yeah.
Right? And you get to know the ones that you like, and they do make a difference for me. Right?
I found an app called Calm recently, and Calm has some really great ones. I can't look at my phone because we're recording it, but there's another one that I just found that does like 3D meditations.
Okay.
And so you wear headphones during the meditation rather than just playing it over a speaker.
Is it binaural beats?
No, it started with an S, but it was super weird because it was almost like I could feel the sound traveling from one ear to the other. It took a minute to get used to, but wow, was it relaxing? Like, it was something so different. And so trying new things is really important.
Exactly. As much as you don't like to try new things,
Yeah.
you're going to come to a point, and it may be next week, next month, that you're going to want to take control of your anxiety and how you deal with it and how you deal with your depression. So you will go searching. And that honestly is the first step. Talking about it, there's nothing wrong with you, but you will come to where I'm at now. Okay, I'm in a good place. Things aren't 100% all the time, but that's okay. But I now am striving to get to a better place so that I can help myself, help my friends, help my family, and realize, you know what? It's who I am. And you liked me before and you was a bit nuts. You're still going to like me afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And like, I just have to mention for the people who might be watching that don't suffer from mental health disorders, when you look at a lot of celebrities or professionals that have become very successful, one of the things that you'll find they do commonly is meditation. Most of them will practice either yoga or meditation or something like Tai Chi, things that really bring that recognition to your own body and your own soul and your own thoughts. And a lot of people are successful because they take that time for themselves. So it actually, I mean, it's scientifically proven. Like, they have done what's called an fMRI, a functional MRI on your brain, that different places will light up when you do different things, and the things that happen when you do meditation and how that shows up in your brain are just so spectacular. And I know I'm so nerdy, I'm sorry, I'm so nerdy.
I'm like, look at her rock. She's like, read a book. Generation gap right here.
But no, like, crystals, like, my stepsister is super into crystals as well, and she actually, it just melted my heart one day. She knew I was really struggling, and she says, I'm going to be dropping off a little gift at your house. And she dropped me off a little piece of Paleo Santo wood and a crystal, a rose quartz crystal. And rose quartz crystal is supposed to be helpful in balancing your emotions, but it's also really good for female hormones and stuff like that as well, from what I understand. And she wrote me this beautiful little note about like how it helps and that she hopes it can help me. And it was just so lovely, and it just, the thought of that was just so wonderful too. And the Paleo Santo, apparently if you burn the wood just a little bit and let the aroma go in your house, it's supposed to bring up energy and rid your environment of negative energies and that kind of stuff. I have not yet burnt it yet. I should. I so should, because I would really like to try it. I'm very into aromatherapy as a coping strategy. I have a lovely anti-anxiety blend going on in my kitchen right now, just as a precautionary, because I knew that this topic is very heavy. And so I was like, I'm going to put on scents that are relaxing and known to actually increase, dopamine and serotonin and all that kind of stuff in your brain, to help us get through this without having overwhelming emotions.
And I'm not crying, and that's huge. Right? That's huge, right? But I am quite confident in discussing this, and like I said, I can go in front of a crowd and teach, 35, 10-year-olds how to sing a song, but I couldn't get out of my car some days, right? But I know I am capable. I know I'm strong. I know I'm smart, and I'm human. And this is just part of being human, is anxiety and depression, and that's okay. And people need to understand that it is okay to be this way. And I think I'm pretty cool. Right?
Me too, right?
So
I still love me.
Not all the time, depending, right? But you learn that it's okay to be you. And it does, like we said before, it doesn't define you. It's what
a part of you.
It's a part of you, what you're dealing with, but it's not who you are. Right? And that's something that people need to remember.
And I mean, like, I've chosen as a coping strategy to make these videos because I am unable to work in my normal capacity in mental health, but I still want to be able to help others. But the thing is that helping other people person to person is too emotionally draining for myself. And so by doing videos, I'm able to put my message out there and speak my, education and teach, and just let people know they're not alone and feel welcome and feel like they can more openly talk about this without having to take on that energy as well. So it's been a really great way of helping me to re-identify and understand that I can still help people even if it's from a distance. So if you are watching these videos, if you have watched any of my other YouTube videos, please share them, because you don't know who out there might find this helpful or might be closeting their anxiety and depression. I closeted mine for probably, I mean, realistically, like 3 years. I didn't recognize that it was getting really bad, and I should have. Now that I look back and I realize, wow, that never would have made me cry before, and I was getting really, like,
Yes, you were.
I was at work. I was always a very strong person. I remember I took on a management position, and I remember my store manager using me as an example, saying, "You never see Haley sweat, right?
Mm-hmm.
When things are going on, you never see her sweat. She just does it. She just gets over it." And that was for probably the first 4 years of my career there. I was there for 6. And the last 2 years, I had more stressors come on. I changed departments I was working in that had a lot more stressors, had a lot different staff and new things to learn. I was dealing with installs, so there was a lot more issues I was dealing with, a lot more high-rate customers, that kind of stuff. And I began recognizing that things that I never would find emotional prior to that, I began getting emotional over. And I remember one day sitting in my boss's office, and I was just telling him that there was some stuff going on the floor. People were getting quite upset, and I was just trying to advocate for these people. And I normally would have been able to sit down and have a conversation like this and not cry. And I burst into tears in his office, and I literally was shocked, and I said, "I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know why I'm crying." And that should have been my
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
Because that wasn't me. And I had never, ever cried at work before that.
You'll get over that.
And then, no, but I never had. And all of a sudden, it became more common. And part of it was I was going through a bit of harassment at work as well, but that didn't help. Of course, that's a stressor for anybody and would make anybody emotional. But for a long time, I would have been able to just say, you know what?
Water off a duck's back.
Yeah, and move on and just be like, I'm going to be the bigger person. And
yeah, but it's exhausting being a bigger person.
It was, and it really did. It was a detriment to me, and I recognized that my behaviors really changed at that point, and my emotions really changed, and so now that I've recognized it, I definitely hope that other people can recognize it in themselves if they need it.
Yeah.
And we need to open up the conversation and reduce that stigma about mental health, because
100%.
You know what, Claire and I are wonderful people, even though we deal with things that some people don't. And
everyone's story is different.
Yeah.
And each book is different. But you have to be able to learn to turn your own pages.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
There you go. Very insightful.
I'm the artsy one. Very
insightful. Yeah, that's awesome. Other coping strategies, breathing techniques are super fantastic. They help to calm down your heart rate if you're going into an anxiety attack. They also just help you recenter. Like if you're noticing my thoughts are getting really busy or you're having a hard time staying focused on task, it's just a really good thing to be like, okay, I'm just going to breathe for a second, right? Like earlier when Claire was like, I'm starting to feel a flutter, like that would have been a great moment to just stop and be like, okay, let's take a deep breath and whatever, let's just calm that down. What else? Drawing I mentioned, writing is so great.
Music,
Exercise,
listening to music. I mean, if I need to have a good cry, I know exactly what songs to pick, and I'll play. And they have the things, it's not specific to the song, what the lyrics are saying, but it just makes me feel a certain way, and I can have that release and cry and leave it off it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's, if crying is not, I always used to think crying was weak. No, it's just, you've held on for so long that the dam bursts.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with me.
Yeah.
Right? So especially if you can't express yourself, you can't talk, the only way you know is just to and cry, and I'm a crier.
Yeah.
So
I have become a crier. I never used
Oh,
to be a
it's
crier like
fun.
I was, but I am now. Yeah. Very overwhelming things make me cry. I know we've had, my husband and I have had some conversations where I just burst into tears, like, sometimes it's really hard to talk to you about this stuff. I'm like,
true.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. Just grab the tissues, it'll be over soon. Yeah.
But anyways, so, there's so many different coping strategies. Please watch my other videos if you haven't. And then the last question, and I'm really hoping that some of my participants will answer or have some insight into this. There's a space that you can put anything regarding your personal experience and anxiety. What do you want people with anxiety to know? Or what do you think they should know? Or what do you think that people who do not deal with anxiety should know?
My advice to anybody out there that is wondering about anxiety is that it can happen at any time. There is no set age. Um, I'm in my 40s and dealing with it. That it's okay. It's okay to feel that way, to realize that you have your own strengths and weaknesses, and you just work within those weaknesses and strengths. Know what you're good at and focus on that. And if times come up where you just can't deal, that's okay. You don't have to. Everybody has what they can deal with and what they can't. And it's okay to be different. It's okay that you aren't exactly like everybody else and that, other people can do this, why can't I? That's a mentality that can be damaging to you. So just realize that even if you can't do something most other people do, there are a lot of things you can do that they can't do. And that by realizing that can make you stronger and make your life just a little bit easier, knowing that only you can set your own expectations. You don't need to live up to anybody else's expectations.
Hi again. Hope you didn't miss me too much. So we're now talking about the things that we want people with anxiety or people without anxiety to know. And the same thing as the last one, I figured this would probably be easier for me to read out a couple of the answers for you. So I'm going to start with Danica's answers on this one. Danica and I have very similar views on things, and I absolutely love the things she had to say. The one thing she wanted to share, that anxiety has made her a more empathetic person and has given her excellent coping skills. And that is so true. Like, you really do learn with anxiety that the only way to get through it is by learning coping strategies. And most people don't learn that, and that's why anxiety will often come up later in life. So for people like myself and Danica, who are still, we're in our 20s, and we have a lot of life ahead of us, and for us to be able to tackle this now, as awful as it is, it's good to learn it now, because I feel like it's setting us up for a better future. So anxiety can often be irrational, and we know it's irrational, so please just give me a minute, she says. That's so true, and that's exactly what Claire and I said. She also says, and this is really important, and we did mention it when talking about negative energies, when I'm anxious, telling me don't be anxious is as helpful as telling somebody who's upset to calm down. She gave me a little meme here, which I'm definitely going to input because it's just so unrealistic. And just please don't say that to somebody dealing with anxiety. If you have a friend who is infamous for bailing last minute plans, or gets weird when you tell them that you've invited somebody else instead of getting irritated, maybe just check in to see what's going on. Nobody likes a flake, but sometimes our anxiety gets the best of us. And finally, anxiety is more common than you think. So next I'm going to share Carol's response to this. And again, I think she gives some really great insight. She said that she used to keep a journal to help with her anxiety, and for some people journaling is very effective, and for other people journaling and writing things down can be very stressful. With anxiety, you do need to kind of have a balance of like tackling the stressful things, but then, helping yourself out with some non-stressful things, and you kind of just do this little flow to keep it in balance so that you don't just go plummet. So a little bit at a time. And so I can definitely see why Carol is saying that, her journal made her sad. Now I do not take work home, so that's absolutely true. Don't take work home with you. Your home life and your work life really do have to be a separate thing. You are so much more than your job. And you're the only one, maybe besides your significant other and your parents, who are going to appreciate that. So don't take your work home. She also states that social events are not scary when I go with people I trust. I spend loads of time with people who love me. I say something to myself daily, something nice to myself daily. I breathe and I cry. I talk to my mother a lot. She's my rock. So having that special person is super beneficial. I am not perfect, but it's one day at a time, and learning it's okay to be alone and happy. Last but not least, for our written entries, is Drew. And again, she put some really good insight because everybody reacts differently to stress. And for Drew, as she mentioned previously, anger is one of those ways that she expresses her anxiety and kind of has. That's just how her overwhelm comes out. So the one thing she said is, I often find myself explaining to most people that no, anxiety doesn't mean I'm going to be scared and hide in a corner. I very much have a fight reflex to everything, so my anxiety manifests outwardly as bouts of irritation and anger. I've spent lots of times just having to explain myself or that I'm not an angry person, I'm just anxious and it manifests in a bad way. I'm doing my best not to let it control me, but it's hard. And it is. Anxiety definitely gets the best of us. No matter how, like we've shown you, no matter how irrational we know our thoughts are, we know when our thoughts are irrational a majority of the time. There's just that barking dog in your ear that's telling you everything opposite of that. And shutting off that little voice is incredibly hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to get there.
Anxiety isn't something that you just can turn off or one day just be okay and think that you're better. Anxiety takes a long time to be able to work with, and I don't know if it ever goes away. I know that my anxiety for myself has lessened just with working with how I deal with it and wanting to minimize that anxious part of my brain so that it doesn't constantly think that I'm in trouble. It's been a long road of working with minimizing my anxiety, and a lot of people didn't know that I had anxiety, and at first I was embarrassed. I was very embarrassed about it, and I didn't want to be a statistic, and I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, and I hid it for a long time because of that. But I think that it's better that people know, because then they can understand why there are certain things that I can't do, that right now my mind and my body say, no, you can't do that right now. It's not the right time. If I can't ride a ferry or I can't go on a boat, they need to understand why I can't do that. And it's because I'm not ready to put myself in that situation, because I know what's going to happen, and I know that my anxiety is just going to spike, and I need people to understand that it's not because I don't want to do it. It's just that I can't do it right this second. Or if I'm in a car and I get stuck, then I don't want to have to try and hide that from somebody, because it's going to happen one day. I'm going to be in the car with a friend and we're going to get stuck in traffic, and I'm going to have to try and do all of my coping strategies so that I don't panic. And I want people to know that if you have somebody that, or know somebody that has anxiety or deals with panic attacks, it's okay. Just be there with them and let them work through it. Ask if they need anything. Just hold their hand. But that's all I needed. When my partner's with me, sometimes that's all I need. It's just him to put his arm on me or to grab my hand. Even if he just puts his hand on my knee, sometimes that's all I need. And I know that he's there. I know that I'm not alone and that I can work through it. I don't know if people, what's the word? I don't know what people see on the other side, like what it's like to see somebody deal with anxiety. But just know that it might be hard to see it happen. But just being there for them when it's happening, it's the best thing that you could do. Even if you don't say anything, just stand there. Just be by their side. And when they're ready to talk about it, they'll talk about it. And they'll try and explain it to you. When I was trying to explain it to Eric when it got really bad, he understood. He knew that I was hitting my breaking point and that there was some pretty shitty things happening in my life at that point in time. And I looked at him and I said, I need to talk to somebody. Because it's hard to talk to somebody like your partner who's there with you every single day and sees the good and he sees the bad. And it's not that he wasn't able to help me. I just needed somebody else who knew nothing about me, who knew nothing about my family or my situation, to basically tell me that it was okay, that what was happening in my life was, yes, super messed up, and it wasn't okay, but I was going to be okay. And that the strategies that I was using, that I was on the right path, and I wasn't going cuckoo, and I didn't need medication because I'm very stubborn, but I was going to be okay. And there is a way to get through this and to work with it and know that at the end of the day, I was going to be okay and I was going to get through it. So, yeah, that's all I have. I hope it's helpful. And if you or somebody you know suffers with anxiety, just be there for them. They'll appreciate it no matter what. And we still love and appreciate all of the things that you do for us and help us through hard times. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
I have already kind of covered a lot of that about it actually being a mental health disorder, a disease. It's an illness of your brain. It truly is. Please watch my depression video because that has that diagram in it that talks to you about the actual chemicals in your brain and how they work, and it even touches on how antidepressants work, which I think is really important for people with anxiety and depression to know.
That would be the big takeaway for me. Like I said, having struggled with this for 25 years, it's okay to take medication. There's nothing wrong if you take it. There's nothing wrong if you don't take it. Just reach out to your doctor. I mean, I went to mine one of the last times I had to do some adjusting, and I just was, part of it was menopause, but you know, like I couldn't form thoughts, I couldn't words, I couldn't sleep. It was all of those things plus on top of anxiety. And I remember I wrote, you know, here's my list, and he's like, well, have you tried this? I'm like, I'm not being at the moon, I'm not drinking weird tea, I just need your help. And he's like, right, let's go with this. And you know, and it's never just not a here's a script and off you go.
Yeah.
It's, you know, there is lots. I mean, they're not just willy-nillying giving you
Yeah.
certain drugs. Each person is different. You know, not everyone can take Zoloft or whatever, right? I've been on different ones, and some are better. And it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah, it's
and
very
when you
much-
find the balance, life gets better.
Yeah, it's very much trial and error with antidepressants. I was pretty fortunate to start a medication for myself that worked right away. It didn't work right away, I shouldn't say. It took about 4.5 weeks before my, you often do have side effects from these medications, especially if they're new to you. There's something called SSRI syndrome, which you have to watch out for, because what these medications do is they increase serotonin. SSRI syndrome is, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the name of it at the moment? But it's a serotonin overload, basically, in your brain, which can actually cause your body, the automatic functions, so the things that are controlled by your autonomic nervous system. I have to look for the word there. So your autonomic nervous system controls your heartbeat
Right.
and your breath, the things you don't have to think about doing.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so when you get too much serotonin, it overloads that system, and so you can end up getting like fevers, you can end up getting really bad migraines, and if not treated, if you don't recognize them and it's not treated, it can potentially be fatal. However, it is very, very rare, but some people are more sensitive to medications than other people. So
I am, for sure. Like, you take it and it worked well. And then over time, like I said, it does ebb and flow. But like I said, do what works for you. You may not know what it is this month, and it could change next month.
Yeah.
But, and I think also, as much as it is a struggle to reach out and get the help, you have to take control of it for you, because no one else is going to. No, maybe our friends may not understand, but if you take control of it, you'll become stronger and just feel better. And you're not, life will begin again, because for a while it doesn't, it stops, or it fits and starts. And then you look at your life as that was a high, this was a low, that was a high, this was a low. You want it to have a nice even keel to experience the joy of life, but also be able to deal with the sadness and the not so nice part of life. You need to be able to do both and still function as a human being, right?
yeah, so I mean, you have to become very in tune to your body and your emotions to recognize an anxiety disorder. And it goes the same for family and friends of those who are struggling or maybe struggling with anxiety and depression. Really watch for people's behaviors changing, because for me, it really almost was quite sudden how all of a sudden I became so emotional at work. That was something that had never been me. I was always a very positive person, so if I went into work and I wasn't smiling at somebody, like, I would have thought at that point that might be something somebody would recognize, right? And for quite a while, there was people like Claire and everybody else that would be like, hey, are you okay?
You just have to look at her and go,
Something's not right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, if you're feeling like something may not be right with a family or a friend,
that is
it's
what's happening.
probably true. There probably is something not right. I do sometimes have like resting bitch face though. Pardon the language. But when I think,
I would never think of you as having that ever.
when I'm thinking about things, I will sit there and I will have the straightest face and like people will be like, are you okay? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I was just thinking. Like, I'm right. And so like a lot of the times people will be like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm totally okay. So I mean, it's obviously learning, but when you spend a lot of time around somebody, you really do recognize when their behaviors are changing. And it's a lot easier sometimes for, I think I left the oven on.
No, you did.
It's a lot easier for sometimes people on the outside to see things than for you to admit them yourself. And so don't be afraid to ask those questions. I know one thing that I learned in suicide prevention training that I had to do for my job, we talked about suicide and how you should react in that situation, or if you think that somebody may be considering taking their own life. And the one thing they said was, you know, they're not usually going to tell you. They're usually going to find ways around it. Like they'll ask for help, but they don't necessarily ask for help directly. So they may not come to you and be like, hey, Claire, I'm contemplating suicide. I might come and be like, you know, my life is just, I feel like it's over, right? And it may just come off as a, maybe I'm really depressed or whatever, but to the intuned mind and somebody who is paying attention, it does not hurt for me to then say, so if Claire came forward and said, you know, that to me, Haley, my life is imploding, I could look at her and I could be like, there should be no shame in saying, hey, Claire, are you contemplating taking your life?
When I'm at my lowest points, that's the first question my doctor asks me.
Yeah.
And I always go, no, it would hurt, and therefore I don't. But, I mean, I have had those thoughts. I've not acted on them because I just know that that's not the answer. For me, that's not the answer, right?
In the case that somebody is not contemplating it, all they're going to say is no. Like,
hell no,
like, no,
that hurts.
right?
Yeah.
They don't, they're not going to get mad at you for being concerned. And if they do, that's, you know, like water off a duck's back. You did what you thought was necessary to help that person. But in the case that they are contemplating suicide, it may save their life just by asking that simple question. Because at that moment, if you say it, it's easier for somebody in that position if you say it to say yes than it is to say, I'm contemplating suicide. And on that note, one thing I wanted to say was one thing we were actually taught is to not address it as committing suicide.
What do you address it as?
Are you contemplating suicide? Because committing sounds like you're
done,
an illegal act. It sounds like it's wrong to have those feelings.
Yes.
Right? Whereas if you say, are you contemplating taking your life or ending your life, or are you contemplating suicide, it's different because it almost takes that stigma away from it.
Plus, it's a thought still. You have a choice then. If you're going to do it or thinking about it, then you've made the decision. Or if you're contemplating it, I guess it's just semantics and how you do the words, right?
So, but they actually tell you it's really important to drop that word committing, and that is something that's actually very challenging because in modern day terminology, that's pretty common. If you see somebody has taken their own life, it's obviously, or it's most commonly documented as committed suicide. But
and going back, that's also because if it's a crime. Going flip side, that's a sin.
Yes.
Right? And you shouldn't take your own life in the eyes of God.
Yeah.
And whether you're religious or not, that's where it goes back to.
Exactly.
Right?
And so it comes back to reducing that stigma because, like I said, suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideations, that's all to do with chemicals and stuff in your brain, and you can be helped whether or not you think at that moment that you may think you're beyond saving and you're not.
Everyone is worth saving.
Yeah. We all have meaning to this world in one way or another, and sometimes it's hard for us to recognize that, but if you were gone today, I'm sure somebody would be impacted by that. So I just wanted to touch on that because I do think it's really, really, really important.
Yes.
And that's something that I want everybody to know, whether or not you deal with anxiety or don't.
Yes, that's excellent. Yes, I think we've covered all of the questions.
I think so.
Yes, this has been very informative. I've learned a bunch of stuff. But like I said, I have no trouble talking about this. It's part of who I am. It doesn't make me, that's not all me. It's just part of who I am. And, the struggles that I've gone through have got me to this point. And, I'm in a way better spot than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's all learning, and you will learn something from it, whether it's cured or not. You will always learn something, and then if you've learned something, you can prevent something, right? So just be as strong as you can, and it's there, and it's nothing wrong with it, right? And there's people that love and support you and are willing to help, and
and for those of you not dealing with it, just be there for people, whether or not it's stressful for you. I know it's hard when somebody might cancel your plans 3 times in a row, but if you do know that they're dealing with mental health, or if they keep canceling and you recognize that as a pattern, don't be afraid to ask them if everything is okay. It's not being pushy by caring, right? Being pushy is obviously forcing somebody to do something that they may not want to do, like going out. It might not necessarily be the best thing for that person that day. It could set them off more depending on where they're at in their mental state. But at the same time, for myself, like with getting exercise and stuff, I have a harder time doing that on my own. And I find it a lot easier if I have somebody to hold me accountable. So I really do count on my friends for stuff like that. Most of the time I'll initiate it and be like, hey, you know what? We're going to go kayaking. What day are you good to go, right? And then that way, because I have the plan, I'm able to actually step out and do it. So just be there for your friends and family. I know it's something that's very complicated, and I mean, we've been doing this video for an hour and a half, and I feel like we did touch on it a lot. I feel like it was fairly informative. I feel like you get to see 2 different perspectives, because Claire and I do have different anxiety symptoms and different histories, but there are a wide variety of anxieties, and like I said, the more behavioral disorders or mental health disorders that people have in conjunction, the more complicated it gets, especially when it comes to things like autism, because autism is actually built up of a whole bunch of different mental health disorders.
That's another entire video.
That's so...
But do feel free to reach out to Haley or myself via Haley. Like I said, I'm more than willing to talk about it and discuss it. And for me, how I cope and how I've learned to deal with it is humor, right? And I'm funny. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it helps me cope, and to know that it takes the levity out of it, because sometimes it can be funny when you can't get out of the house because you can't find that one thing and your world is ending. It's anxiety, but it is funny, so sometimes you have to learn to take a step back and laugh at yourself.
Take it in stride. You saw me laugh a whole bunch of times during this video, and it's not because anxiety it's funny. It's because you recognize that you have to have sort of humor in things.
Totally.
And especially when you're understanding that this is so irrational, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And it's like Claire said, it's just sometimes, like she tells her significant other to, just agree with me right now, and then later I'll figure out it was wrong.
Exactly.
Right? And it's true. Like, you, like afterwards you think about it and you're like, oh my gosh, like what was even happening? Anyways, guys, I really think that was a great conversation. Please, if you have any questions, reach out. If there's anything that you would like to hear us talk about again, or you want some clarification on, or other topics that you might want addressed, please go ahead and drop it in the comments or send me a message. I would be happy to do that. I really hope that this video comes together the way that I wanted to, and that I have other responses from willing parties to help you see more of the ins and outs of anxiety. And I think we'll call it an evening.
All right, thank you very much for listening.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much for participating in this video.
You are welcome.
I know it's not easy for people to open up about their anxiety and depression.
But for me, it's quite freeing, honestly.
Yeah.
And I have no issue with that. And like I said, other topics, age-related, whatever, like try anxiety and menopause. That's a whole different one, right? So, and each person is different. But like I said, we're here to, like I said, we've got any questions, but it was a joy and a pleasure, Haley. Thank you very much.
And truthfully, I have to say, for those of you who might feel closeted about coming out about your mental health, since I have started sharing my journey, I have had so many people reach out to me and thank me personally. They have thanked me for coping strategies. They've told me how much they appreciate it. They've been telling me that they've actually found it very inspirational and that they're learning about themselves more because of these videos. And many of the people who have offered to help with this video and come out and talk about their stories about anxiety were all people that didn't talk about it previously, which I found really, really enlightening. So if by me sharing my story, if that's helping others to share theirs, imagine what it could do if we all shared our stories.
Exactly.
So don't feel afraid of judgment.
You're not alone.
And this is a real thing. You are not crazy.
Yes.
Love you all. Thank
Right.
you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you learned something. I hope you found it informative and helpful in some way or another. I also wanted to say a huge thank you to the participants of this video, the people who took the time to make videos and send in your answers. There is no telling you how much I appreciate you. Stigma is a leading cause of people not getting help for their mental illness as well as suicide. So by taking the time to share your stories, which I know is not easy, you really could be helping to educate the public and save lives. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all.